You have tuned in to another episode of The Double Edge Factor. I'm your host, Rod Manuel, and peace and blessings unto you. Before we get going, be sure to like, follow, and hit that subscribe button because the more positive interactions you put out there, the more they push this podcast to people who've never heard it before, which will allow us to grow and have a greater impact on more people around the world. So, if you would do me that huge favor, I would certainly appreciate it. Today, I want to talk about this idea that we should somehow shrink ourselves, down our confidence, or dim our light to make others more comfortable. And I'm here to tell you that that's not just wrong. It's actually dangerous. You see this everywhere. The woman who apologizes for sharing her expertise in a meeting. The student who downplays their achievements so that their friends don't feel bad. The entrepreneur who speaks quietly about their success because they don't want to seem arrogant. You see, we've somehow been conditioned to believe that confidence is somewhat selfish. That stepping fully into our gifts and abilities is inconsiderate to others. But here's what I'm learning. When you adjust your confidence downward just to accommodate other people's insecurities, you're not being kind. You're being complicit in keeping everyone small. Let me tell you, I'm going to tell you about a story that changed how I kind of think about this. There were these 4 young Hebrew boys, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They had been taken captive by Babylon. Now, this easy thing, the considerate thing would be to just go along with the program, eat the king's food, worship the king's gods, blend in, don't make waves. After all, you wouldn't want to make their captors uncomfortable, right? But Daniel had a different idea. When they brought him the king's rich food and wine, he politely but firmly refused. He asked for vegetables and water instead. His confidence in his principles didn't waver, even when it would have been much easier and safer just to conform. Now, imagine if Daniel had thought, well, I don't want to seem difficult. I don't want to make the officials uncomfortable by my dietary restrictions. Maybe I should just compromise just a little bit. The entire trajectory of this story would change. Instead, Daniel's unwavering confidence in who he was and what he stood for not only preserved his integrity, it ultimately elevated everyone around him. Here's the thing about confidence that most people get wrong. Authentic confidence isn't about putting others down. It's not about arrogance or showing off. Real confidence is about knowing your worth and operating from a place of knowing that regardless of how others react to it. When you dim your light to make others comfortable, you rob them of the opportunity to rise to meet you. You rob them of inspiration. You rob them of the chance to examine their own limitations and grow beyond them. Think about the people who have the biggest impact on your life. Were they the ones who played small to make others feel good about themselves? Or were they the ones who fully stood in their power by doing so, showing you what was possible in your own life? Years ago, I had this mentor who never apologized for his success. He never downplayed his achievements or even spoke in a self-depreciating way. At first, honestly, it made me a little uncomfortable. I thought, wow, this dude is really confident, maybe a little bit too confident. But you know what happened? Being around his unwavering self-assurance forced me to examine my own relationship with confidence. It challenged me to step up to my own accomplishments and stop shrinking. That's what authentic confidence does. It elevates the room, not by putting others down, but by setting a higher standard for what's possible. Now, I'm not talking about being obnoxious and inconsiderate. There's a difference between confidence and conceit. You see, confidence is knowing your worth. Conceit is thinking your worth is more than others. Confidence is being secure in your abilities. Conceit is putting others down to feel better about your own self. But here's where people get it twisted. We've started calling confidence conceit whenever it makes someone else uncomfortable. We've pathologized self-assurance and turned it into this small crime. So let's go back to my guy, Daniel. After about 10 days of eating vegetables while everyone else was eating the king's rich food, Daniel and his friends were getting healthier. They were getting stronger than all of the others. Their confidence in their principles literally made them better. And later, when the king Nebuchadnezzar needed wise counsel, who did he turn to? The ones who had the confidence to stand in their truth, even when it was uncomfortable for everyone else. So you see, when you operate from an authentic confidence, you give others permission to do the same. You create space for excellence. You raise the bar for everyone else around you. But when you're constantly adjusting yourself downward, when you're apologizing for your gifts, when you hide your light under a bushel, to use a biblical phrase, you're not just limiting yourself. You're actually contributing to the culture of mediocrity. You're teaching others that the appropriate response to someone else's insecurity is to make yourself smaller. And that's not love. That's not kindness. That's enabling. Real love sometimes means being comfortable with other people's discomfort. Let me say that again. Real love sometimes means being comfortable with other people's discomfort. Real kindness sometimes means refusing to shrink so that others don't have to grow. Now, I know what some of y'all are saying, but what about humility? Isn't confidence the opposite of humility? No, not really. Humility is thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. It's being so secure in who you are that you don't need to constantly prove it or constantly apologize for it. Daniel was humble. He served faithfully. He was respectful to authority. He helped others. But he never compromised his core identity to make others more comfortable. And because of that unwavering confidence in who he was able to serve at the highest levels and make the best impact. Here's what I want you to consider. Every time you adjust your confidence downward to accommodate someone else's insecurity, you're making a choice. You're choosing temporary comfort over long-term growth, both yours and theirs. You're choosing to manage other people's emotions rather than letting them take responsibility for their own reactions. And yes, some people will feel uncomfortable with your confidence. Some people will call you arrogant. Or you think you all that. You need to turn it down a notch. That's not your problem to fix. That's information about where they are in their own journey, not about where you should be in yours. Your job is not to manage other people's feelings about your success, your gifts, your confidence, or your growth. Your job is to be the fullest, most authentic version of yourself and let that inspire others to do the same. So, here's my challenge to you. Stop apologizing for your expertise. Stop downplaying your achievements. Stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Stand in your confidence like Daniel stood in his principles, not with arrogance, but with quiet, unshakable, knowing of who you are and what you bring to the world. This world does not, and I repeat, it does not need another person playing small. This world needs you at your full capacity, confident in your gifts, secure in your worth, and unafraid to let your light shine. Because when you do that, when you refuse to dim your light, you don't just change your own life. You give everyone else around you the permission to shine brighter. And that's not selfish. That's service. This is Rod Manuel with the Double Edge Factor. And if you found this episode or even a few words value added, please share it with someone, just one person. The only way we grow this podcast is when you guys share it. The more you share, the greater impact we can have on more listeners around the world. So hit that subscribe button to never miss another episode. Or you can find the Double Edge Factor on Linktree.com, where you can join that email list and have access to all of our social media outlets. And I'll leave you with this, my friends. Be intentional with your words, your thoughts, and your actions, and always find a way to be a blessing to someone else today.